Back in October, November of 2023, I read this great book called Digital Minimalism, Choosing a Focused Life in a Noisy World by Cal Newport. He's a productivity expert and a professor at Georgetown University, if I remember correctly. He also has another bestseller book called Deep Work, a fantastic book with great concept that I already implemented in my daily work life. Reading this book has fundamentally changed my relationship with technology because for a long time I wanted to break away from that mindless scrolling and feeling trapped by social media consumption. So this digital detox, as I call it, I've been on for the past 6 months has impacted me in numerous ways. And today I like to talk about how digital minimalism saved my street photography. So this is not going to be a book review, but rather a concept that has impacted me and my street photography unexpectedly. Before we get started, I just quickly want to introduce myself. My name is Embreen, aka Hipster in Copenhagen. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. I also have a newsletter and a blog with a B on my website. I also have a complete overview of the gear I use for street photography and making content for this channel. Check it out, there might be something for you there. What is digital minimalism? So let me give you the Cliff Notes version of the concept. So what I really like about this book is that it has two parts. So the first part is the philosophical one and the second part is practical. So let's start with the philosophical one first. Part 1 is really about laying the foundation for digital minimalism. It really just talks about how to manage our relationship with technology in this day and age. The author stresses a need for a different kind of philosophy when it comes to technology. Essentially, we are fighting an uneven fight because tech companies are constantly trying to get our attention by optimizing their platforms and algorithms through likes and clicks, so we stay on their platforms longer. The key here is to find the right balance and relationship with technology because it's not all bad and it has its benefits. The second half of the book is quite practical and the book goes on to explain how to become a digital minimalist. So basically the book is centered around a 30-day method or challenge. So the author calls this a digital declutter or a digital recalibration of sorts. During this 30-day tech break, the idea here is to explore and rediscover activities and behaviors that you find satisfying and meaningful. And at the end of the break, you slowly reintroduce optional technologies from a blank slate. And for each technology that you decide to reintroduce, you have to figure out its value and how to maximize that value. And this is where the fun part begins. Alright, so the great reset. So let me tell you how it started for me. So in some of my other vlogs, I mentioned that I reduced my social media consumption quite drastically for the past couple of months, but I also spent less and less time on my phone. So these days, I mostly use my phone for Googling things, taking notes, which is really important. And this is something that I'm actually trying to transition into a actual physical notebook. But here the phone is just easier. So right now I'm using a hybrid model where I take notes on my phone. And if I have time, I'll put it in a physical notebook afterwards. I have also removed a lot of social media and other apps from my home screen and I put on screen timers. So I only allow myself a certain amount of time where I can use social media apps, including YouTube. And in the beginning, it was really hard because of FOMO, so fear of missing out, and that deep tech dependence that a lot of us have, basically wanting to mindlessly scroll, where you pick up your phone for something, like taking notes, and then suddenly you end up down the rabbit hole in a social media app. And then an hour later, you just wasted a lot of time just scrolling through something that is really not important. So to get away from that, I did all these things. And after the initial adjustment period, I actually started to forget to check my phone and to check social media. And I actually started to feel a lot of mental clarity because I didn't have to go and check my phone and feel that anxiety that comes from using social media sometimes. For me, digital minimalism is more than a trend. It's essentially a mindset shift. So digital minimalism represents an entire mindset shift around our relationship with technology, but it also finds its roots in the greater minimalist movement. But the great thing is that it puts emphasis on quality over quantity, especially when it comes to screen time and technology. Digital minimalism has introduced a few new things in my life, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video. So the digital detox that I've been on for a few months has reduced distractions and allowed me to refocus on what matters truly, and that's street photography, obviously. But more generally, I started to experience more heightened mental clarity, focus, and productivity during my waking hours. so I can get stuff done, like 2 videos a week for this channel. Some of the cool things that I've added lately is analog activities. So I have slowly reintroduced some analog activities to balance out that digital consumption. So I started to explore some of the analog activities that I wanted to do someday, but I could never find time for. So I also mentioned this in my other vlogs that I suddenly started to read a lot of books, and I think I bought over 15 books that I just had to own, and I actually ended up completing my bookshelf behind me. It stood empty for a lot of years, so now I have a lot of cool books that I really enjoy reading. I also found time to write, and this is something I wanted to do for years, but I could never find the time or prioritize it. So now I have a blog and I have a newsletter, of course, on street photography. You can check it out on my website, as I mentioned in the beginning as well. So by reducing my social media consumption, I could add a lot of cool new analog activities. So the other thing is finding joy in simplicity. So basically this means less stress and anxiety, less boredom, increased focus, and enhanced creativity in whatever I choose to do. And this is giving me a lot of value to be able to do the things that I want to do right here, right now, and not be caught by procrastination or just run on autopilot. And thirdly, building mindful tech habits. So I mentioned before that part of the 30-day tech challenge is to slowly reintroduce optional technologies or apps based on the value they provide and how to maximize that value going forward. And the past 6 months has taught me to use tech intentionally rather than compulsively, and be able to balance the mindful use of an app than mindless use of an app. Let's talk about how digital minimalism saved my street photography. The main 2 drivers that drove that transformation or realization was self-reflection and rediscovery of my street photography identity. When I started to experience more mental clarity and focus, I also started to do more self-reflection of my street photography. So 2023 was a weird street photography year for me. I had long periods where I didn't want to pick up my camera, I didn't want to go out, I didn't want to think about photography at all. And I was anxious, I was bored, and I wasn't really satisfied with my own progress and the photos that I was making. And I think part of that pressure came from having this YouTube channel, because I was quite a new content creator and I felt a lot of pressure of making great photographs, especially for my POV videos. And shortly after, I started to practice digital minimalism and try to introduce some of the concept into my life. I suddenly had the urge to pick up my camera again, not knowing really to what end. And obviously a few things happened along the way, because this was over a 6-month period, and you can watch those vlogs where I talk about it more in depth. Eventually, all that self-reflection led me to rediscover my street photography identity all over again. I started slowly to reconnect with what motivates me, what drives me, like in the beginning of my street photography journey, where I was just so hungry to learn, and I spent all those hours out on the streets just learning and perfecting my craft. And I also started to rediscover my why. So why do I do street photography? Why do I love it? Why do I still love it after 8 years of being a street photographer? So a lot of positive things has happened, like going out on daily photo walks. A challenge led me to become closer to my subjects. I ended up loving the 28mm focal length, a focal length I never thought I would add to my street kit anytime soon. I also started to see a whole different side of street photography that really motivated me and kind of gave me that why back. So why do I do it? And I also spend more time on learning about street photography. I've seen some really interesting and fascinating documentaries of the OG street photographers. And I also got my love back for film photography. I have my dad's film camera. Anyway, the point here is that when I decided that I wanted to do digital minimalism and cut out the social media consumption, I actually ended up introducing stuff that provides me so much value, and it opened up a lot of new avenues for me to explore in my street photography. Digital minimalism really flipped everything on its head for me, and it actually ended up saving my street photography for the better. All right, I'll see you in the next one.